So joining us now in studio, we have our great friend Ken Klippenstein, who is an investigative reporter for The Intercept. Great to see you, my friend.
Great to be with you guys.
See you, man.
You got a big old scoop this morning. A lot to unpack here, and it's quite explosive, actually. Let's go ahead and put the element we have up on the screen. The article that's out this morning is titled "Truth Cops Leaked Documents Outline DHS's Plans to Police Disinformation." Some of the key takeaways here that you have, Ken, are that even though DHS said that they shuttered their quote-unquote disinformation governance board, what you have found is that underlying work is still going on. You also found some of the specifics about what they're targeting here on the origins of COVID-19, efficacy of COVID-19 vaccines, racial justice, U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan, and also the nature of U.S. support to Ukraine. So just to start with, what are your sources here? What's the information that you were able to gather, and give us the big picture of what the government is up to here?
Yeah, so this came from sources that I have within DHS, FBI, and also court records that are coming out from an investigation by, I think it was the Missouri Attorney General, looking at these things, and under discovery, they're able to release some of the primary source documents that they're getting. And then just, the kind of big strategy assessments that they tend to put out that nobody reads because so much of it is so boring. But if you can, stay awake for long enough, you can find some really interesting details in them.
Interesting. Okay, so talk to us about this portal. You said that Facebook has created a special portal for DHS and government partners to report disinformation directly. Do we have an indication that's still in existence? Like, the takeaway for me from the story was they fired, the Nina Jankowicz lady, but they essentially just renamed it and are keeping the entire project alive and actually keeping it going even far past that.
Yeah, that was essentially my interest in doing this story. Is I saw this huge end zone dance on the part of civil libertarian types that the Disinformation Governance Board, very Orwellian title that people can get around and see how crazy this is, celebrating that it was shut down. And I very quickly, almost instantly, was hearing from sources within DHS that that's not the case. Like that Disinformation Governance Board was an attempt to sort of centralize and formalize at a leadership and headquarters level what was going on, but that was still going on at the component level of all of the different child agencies that are within DHS. So this story is an attempt to try to sketch out, okay, so what does that mean? What does it look like? Because there's so much speculation and sort of guessing as to what it is, and there's very little in the way of just what are the facts of what's happening, how are they doing this, and what is their authority?
So lay that out for us. How does this actually, what are the interactions between DHS officials and these tech platforms? What sorts of content are they flagging as potentially problematic? Because they have these disclaimers in their emails like, of course we're not telling you to censor, we're just saying you might want to look into this. Give me a specific example of how this might all unfold.
Yeah, so they've been having bi-weekly meetings as recently as summer. That's as recently as I'm able to get proof. Doesn't mean that it's not still happening. I assume it still is. Between these DHS sub-agencies, kind of taking point is CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, but also FBI and other agencies are meeting with these social media companies like Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and it's what's interesting about it is, just like you said, their rationale for it is, we're not actually telling them what to do. We're just recommending it. And
just making suggestions.
Right. And it's so disingenuous because it's like these companies are lobbying the federal government on different things. You think they're gonna want to alienate the guys that they're trying very hard to ingratiate themselves to get certain forms of treatment. And so that's the kind of hand's length that they try to hold themselves at, is that we're not mandating it, we're just recommending it. But when you look at the documents that we found, there's no indication that the social media companies are saying, whoa, we're not doing this, we're putting a red line here. They've gone ahead with it.
I mean, the crazy one to me is Afghanistan. The fact that things that are outright just politically bad for the Biden administration are being included in terms of recommendations. So do we know, does anything happen as a result of this? What does the data suggest? Did Facebook ultimately take action? What do they describe the type of action? What does the interplay look like on behalf of the tech companies as to the actual effect of these policies?
Well, on the public side, sometimes you're able to see when they literally just take a post down, as they did with the Hunter Biden laptop story. It was some bizarre thing where it was like they froze the post, they didn't take it down. They're so clever about these things. They try to do things where they're not actually taking down. For example, I have a source in Google who was describing to me, they didn't actually make it so you can't find it. They just made it so that the search results put it so far down that realistically you're not going to see it. So then they say, well, we're not actually censoring it. You can still go to it. We're just, in effect, going to make it so no one can find it.
That's honestly crazier. Yeah, it's
exactly.
almost crazier than deleting.
Same with same with Twitter and these. So there's always, I think there is a lot of awareness on their part that we don't want to go like so far that it's going to be completely naked and try to give ourselves some deniability in terms of saying, we're putting recommendations out there, we're throttling traffic to it, we're not taking it down. So they really like to operate in the gray, I think.
Well, because honestly, if Twitter had taken that approach with the Hunter Biden story, it probably wouldn't have blown up into the big national example of censorship that it ended up being, because they went much further than, let's just suppress this in the algorithm, let's make it so this isn't the first thing that's showing up. Like, now people in their Twitter feed, unless they select to have it just by time, they're just getting the tweets that Twitter thinks that they will like or wants them to like and see. So ultimately, if they had gone about it in a savvier way, I mean, that's what's so nefarious about this. People wouldn't have even been able to really say exactly what was going on here. One of the other things that you uncover is the Hunter Biden censorship incident, as notorious as it ultimately is here. The people who are involved in that are still involved in this project.
Right, and so the FBI has something called the Foreign Influence Task Force, which the Department of Homeland Security does as well, and it's almost exactly the same name. I think it's the Countering Foreign Interference Task Force. And so what that gives you a sense of is the burgeoning nature of these authorities. It just keeps growing. And if you look at it, a lot of it starts in 2018 under the Trump administration. So it's a little more complicated than people think. That's not to say that Trump liked it. He actually fired his CISA director, I think, Brian Krebs. And so, he was against it, but he didn't have the kind of bureaucratic knowledge, let's say, to be able to stop a lot of these things. And then it, continues to proliferate under the Biden administration. I think that the origin of this all is, the 2016 election disinformation, Russian election disinformation. Not that it starts then, but that's sort of when the concerns begin. And then by 2018, come midterms, I think DHS is trying to position itself as, hey, that problem you guys have, we can help with it. Let us handle this. So then in 2018, it's the midterm elections, and by 2020 with coronavirus, then they have a really strong case. And I've looked at polling on this. It does suggest that there's surprisingly large amounts of public support for, frankly, censorship of, what they consider COVID disinformation. I think that they can sense that there's an opening for them there to take advantage of that and say, hey, let us have a role in communicating with these social media platforms. I
mean, it seems to me, and you tell me if this timeline is inaccurate, but you first start in the early days of social media. You've got like Al-Qaeda and ISIS, and there's an effort to find people who are sympathizers, spreading their propaganda or beheading videos or whatever. Like that's the first step. Then you have the Russian efforts, whatever they amounted to in the 2016 election. And then, that's a further step of, okay, we got to see who's sharing this Russian content and what impact is that having. Well, now this seems to have gone even a further step where there's no even artifice of this has to do with foreign actors. Like we're talking about American citizens talking to other American citizens without even any sort of tie to potential international terrorism, which seems to be where these programs really originally had their origins.
Exactly, and that's where DHS had its origin. It's a counterterror post 9/11 department. And if you look at some of the documents that I referenced in the story, I was given the quadrennial review for DHS that kind of sketches out the next 4 years, what the next 4 years are going to look like, and what their kind of big picture strategy is. And they're perfectly open in this draft document about that. Okay, well, war on terror is sort of ramping down. We're going to change our focus essentially to domestic American affairs. And what's interesting about that shift from foreign to domestic is that I tried very hard to find anything in the way of documentary or legal basis saying, okay, now we're authorized to do this. It doesn't exist as far as I can tell. It was just a gradual shift that is happening at the White House level, at the administrative level in both the Trump and Biden administrations. And I wonder how much people even know that it's happening. It's like they've taken advantage of this, and then, as I said before, Trump tried to stop it. They disbanded the Disinformation Board, but so much of this happens at the level that people like me who have sources and are talking to people can find out that it's happening, but there's no way for the public to know that these things are still going on.
Not at all.
Way. Yeah, and one of the ones that broke out to me at the very end of the story is about a Twitter account that has like 56 followers, and that is specifically flagged by a government official, sent to Twitter and Twitter is like, we will escalate this. Thank you. A guy who's literally 56 followers. Like, how is that? In what way?
Who says in his bio, like, this is a parody account, and by the something about like weed stores or something
it says,
like this.
Hoes be mad. This is a parody account.
Yeah.
And why are they spending any time under a banner image of Blucifer, a demonic horse featured at the entrance of Denver Airport? You have to have something better to do than this.
You're not the only ones that think that this is outrageous.
Yeah.
FBI agents that I interviewed during when all that was happening, who themselves were tasked with things like tracking foreign spies, they were outraged that they were put into these temporary units to monitor these social media accounts. And they were telling me, yeah, it's clear my boss doesn't have any idea like what irony is on the internet or like what sarcasm is. Because my job now is just tracking Commie Kid 69 posts something, and we're supposed to respond like it's some national security crisis.
Oh my
so they were very irritated by it as well. And my understanding is there were a lot of FBI agents that were taken from their normal responsibilities and assigned to this kind of stuff.
Well, I said to you, it's like dystopian police state meets Keystone Cops.
Exactly.
But the fact that it, in some ways, is like absurd doesn't take away from the fact that it's really, really disturbing. Because effectively what you have is a worst of all worlds where, we covered extensively on the show Elon Musk and Twitter, and then billionaires control these platforms that are so essential to our speech. And then so not only do you not have any democratic accountability there, but then you also have the government directly interfacing with them and shaping what type of speech is allowed and what type of speech is not allowed, again, with zero transparency, zero ability to have democratic pushback. And so that's why, reporting like yours that at least gives us a little bit of a window into what's happening here is ultimately so essential, Ken.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. Just because I realized there was no attempt to sort of give a comprehensive picture of like what's out there, what are we able to find, what the heck's going on. And in the absence of that, people are going to just, guess. And if you're really worried about disinformation, I tend to think darkness is where that stuff thrives, when people aren't candid about what the heck is going on.
I mean, my view has always been like, if you are going to accept the slings and arrows of a democracy, you have to accept that sometimes there's going to be things that are crazy conspiracy theory. There's going to be things that are inaccurate, and you have to have enough faith in the citizenry that they can handle that they can process that they can move forward, that they can find accurate information. But, clearly, like, we've been under this attempts at censorship since basically 2016, and I don't know if you guys know this, but there are a lot of conspiracy theories that are out there still thriving. So I'm not sure that this has really worked out
Very
for
unfortunate.
us. Ken, thank you so much. Congratulations. Great reporting.
Thank you. Great to
Nice
be with
job,
you guys.
Ken.
Yeah,
really appreciate you guys watching. Seriously, it means a lot. Thank you for all premium subscribers. You help us support people like Ken in order to bring it to all of you with his extraordinary reporting and doing awesome segments for us with The Intercept and many of the other partners. So thank you all so much. We will see you all tomorrow. We're going to have a great show.
Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.